Thanks, Sarah. We appreciate your efforts. If you haven't looked at the program, or if you look at it now, you'll see our next speaker is going to be talking to us about transformative listening. And we had a minor miracle. We think we got, I think, a Mac able to talk to a PC. That's almost like, you know, global peace. So hopefully this will work. But it's my pleasure to introduce Jane Mitchell, and I'm at the age where I can't see close with my glasses on, so I'll pull them up. But Jane serves as a member of the BYU Law School Board of Advisors and currently teaches transformative leadership at BYU Law School. After practicing mergers and acquisitions in New York City, she founded an alternative to prison called the Reset Foundation. And it does for the criminal justice system something similar to what charter schools have done for the educational system. Her work with Reset garnered over $5 million in support and received national attention from places like the White House. She was on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list and a Google Impact Challenge winner. Jane also worked with the New York City Department of Education and taught herself in several jails, including the Utah County Jail and in New York City's Rikers Island. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Stanford, a JD from Columbia Law School, and a master's of education from Columbia Teachers College. She is currently completing her doctoral dissertation on transformative leadership at NYU. And as we're now up here at Aspen Grove, what better place to think about transformation as you look out the windows and see the transformation from the fall colors. It's a great intro and a great opportunity for us to welcome Jane to the podium. I'd like to do that now. Please give her a round of applause.
It's great to be here. I grew up in Europe, and we lived in France mostly, in the Netherlands and Belgium. And when I was 14 years old, had the great misfortune of moving to Wisconsin as entering public school in 8th grade. Not something I would recommend. And I remember the very first day that I went to 8th grade in Brookfield, Wisconsin. I walked through the halls, and everyone else was saying hello to people, greeting friends I hadn't seen for the summer. And of course, I'm clueless, I don't know anybody, and decide I'm just going to go to my first hour of class, since I'm not having a great time and no one's saying hello in the next lockers. So I go to my reading class, no one's in the room, my teacher's there, so I strike up a conversation with her. And hi, I'm Jane, we just moved in, it's my first day. Oh, where'd you move from? Belgium. We just came from Belgium. And then she kind of has a sarcastic tone, and she says, oh, so big move, huh? Yeah, pretty big move. So what is that, like 2 or 3 hours in the car? And I was puzzled. Well, a plane ride, I think it's 4,000 miles, maybe 5,000 miles away. Turns out there is a Belgium, Wisconsin. A few hours drive distance, population 2,200. And of course, this is what my teacher assumed I was moving from. And now, as an adult, I've had, I had a little more compassion. For the teacher, she probably was busy getting ready for her first day of teaching. But in that moment, the conversation peters out. She doesn't ask me about Belgium. She just kind of stops right there. And I remember feeling just very unseen and not listened to at all. Partly because the conversation stopped, partly because there wasn't anything that fit in her worldview of the country Belgium, right? It was the city Belgium. But more importantly, because she also didn't know how to engage with someone like me. But more importantly, she missed what I was really trying to say, which was, I would love to feel welcome here. I'm kind of scared right now. I need somebody to talk to. That's what I was really trying to communicate, and she missed all of that. Now I want to contrast that with Cynthia Stevens, who is another teacher that I had that year. She was my flute teacher, and I ended up really changing my life quite a bit. And she knew that I loved basketball a lot more than the flute, and she she just figured out how to communicate with me. and got me this book that had some great life lessons, both for basketball, but also for flute playing. And she would take me over the summers every year to the National Flute Association conferences, and just gave me a host of experiences that, including a very embarrassing one that I ended up making it was what I ended up writing my admissions statement into college, and feel like the only reason I got into college was because of that very that essay that she kind of gave me opportunities to experience. And I feel like sometimes we say an experience or a person was life-changing, and she was really life-saving. My mom told me that many years later, my mother told me that those first couple of years when we were in Wisconsin, she was always trying to hear how I was doing and anything that I could possibly say. And it was just a one-way conversation. I would never really respond, except for the hour that we had right after I came out of Cynthia's lesson. And she said that I would open up even without being prompted, and would go and tell her everything that was happening in my life. And is it working?
No, sorry.
It's not working.
You're being interpreted into 3 languages.
Oh, wow.
So just slow down.
Is Dutch one of them?
I just need to slow down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And so for the 1 hour after my hour with her is the 1 hour that I would talk unprompted. And have any of you guys actually read Brenda Euland's essays on listening? Great, well, I recommend it. She has a very beautiful essay where she talks about the power of listening and how it transforms us. And she says, when we are listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. When listened to, this little creative fountain inside of us begins to spring and cast up new thoughts and unexpected laughter and wisdom. That is why when someone has listened to you, you go home rested and lighthearted. I have come to think that listening is love. That is what it really is. And so that is what I want to talk about today, is this power, this transformative power that comes from both listening to others and being listened to. I want you guys at your table to find hopefully someone new that you haven't been talking to. Feel free to move around if you need to, and introduce yourself. Spend just 2 minutes introducing yourself, where you're from, what you do professionally, what you care about personally, and then share an experience where you either have had a reading teacher or have been a Cynthia Stevens, a time when you felt deeply listened to or not listened to. So let's see if you can pick one of those and then share it with your partner. Now maybe a quiz, so be sure to listen to what your partner says. Okay. I mean, do you want to split this up? Can we split this up into, I mean, what do we do about this? They told me to make it more interesting. So. It's so good to see you. I do, of course. I'm teaching this. And I do. Well, are you going to leave? Catch up after? Okay. I'm reordering just for the sake of time. Thank you. Take another minute. Right. We are now going to have you, we're going to test how your listening went. And what I'd like you guys to do is find another pair. So there may be people at your table, but partner up with another partnership and introduce the person that you just listened to. See how you do. Hopefully you remember their name. If not, there's no shame having to ask them. And go around and take about a minute each person to introduce them to the other partnership that you're combining. Make sense? Sure. So each partnership, join up with another, join up with 2 other people at your table and introduce the person that you just listened to. So introduce your partner. All right, take another few seconds to wrap up your conversations. Let's get a show of hands. How many of you guys remembered their name? Let's start there. Way to go, Gayla. Great, we have a few people. There's something called the crisis of connection that a group of interdisciplinary scholars are studying. And the crisis of connection refers to, even this is pre-COVID, we know there's a lot of disconnection now with COVID, but even before COVID started, there's all this evidence about how we as a society have become more and more fragmented from one another. And you may be familiar with Robert Putnam's work about how community bonds and social cohesion have been weakening in America for the last 50 years. And increasingly, the I, individual rights are trumping, are becoming more important than the collective we and responsibilities that we have as a community. And there's a group of scholars at NYU that work with this, and I'm doing my dissertation on part of the crisis of connection. And sadly, law schools and the legal profession are filled with the crisis of connection as well. And have you guys seen these numbers before? Depression rates in law school. Let me move this so you guys can see. Law students start out at the same rate as the general population when it comes to mental health illness. By the time the first semester is over, they're at 27% depression, and the second semester, 34%. And by the time law school ends, 40% of them will have had depression. I mean, this is outrageous. There's something about how we're educating and that experience. The scholars of the crisis of connection identify the root cause of disconnection as beliefs that separate us one from another. And it's ideologies that hit each other against one another. We might see one group as superior and another group as inferior. And when we have those beliefs, it becomes really easy not to listen and to start treating each other in dehumanizing ways. Here's another startling statistic. 70% of clients of big law firms are dissatisfied with their lawyers. And the number one reason given is not because of the fees. And it has nothing to do with the quality of service either. I should say it has nothing to do with the law part, knowing the competency in the law, but it has everything to do with listening. The reason they give for their dissatisfaction is poor listening skills and poor communication. And the American Bar Association just teamed up recently with the Heselden Ford Family Foundation and did a pretty comprehensive study on attorneys. And you guys may familiar with some of these rates, but one of the highest suicide rates of any profession is lawyers. We have very high rates of substance abuse, 28% depression rate, 23% have a problematic substance use addiction. And that's compared to 11% for the general highly educated workforce. So we certainly see evidence of this disconnection from ourselves and from each other across the legal profession. And then, and those consequences are very severe because lawyers in particular often are situated in positions of power. And in that hierarchy, we tend to be viewed as a superior group because of the education and the power that's given to attorneys. And so it's easy to then have that disconnection projected across our work and to our clients and legislation, regulations. So it's something concerning. It's very concerning. And the scholars of the science of human connection point to listening as one of the major ways to overcome this disconnect. And the short definition of transformative listening is just listening that has the power to change you, both the person, the listener, and the listenee, if you will. For those of you who appreciate corporate law, that it's both the person like Cynthia who is listened to, like me in that case, as well as the person that is actually doing the listening and change your own perspectives. There's a couple different pillars that fall under this transformative listening, and for the sake of time today, I think we're going to focus on curiosity. And the core, if there's one takeaway that I want you guys to get from today, it is to replace your judgment with curiosity. And I don't mean check your judgment at the door, like don't be wise and don't, use good judgment. But I mean those judgmental thoughts, and especially when you listen, to replace judgmental thinking with curiosity. And I think Joseph Smith is such a good example of this. We have a great heritage in our faith of curious prophets and curious disciples and people that want to learn more. He could have been judgmental and, I think the Methodists are better than the Presbyterians, and I want this answer to my prayers. But that was just very open. He was in a state of not knowing, and curiously went to the Lord and asked, "What is right? What should I be doing here?" And I feel like most of the Doctrine and Covenants is evidence of his curiosity and the questions that he asked the Lord. And I feel like oftentimes if I'm not getting answers, it's usually because I'm asking my questions from a place of judgment instead of a place of curiosity. But I feel like I get answers to my prayers a lot more when my questions are truly coming from a curious place. So we're going to do a quick exercise. We'll see if this works. I want you guys to think about, you can write them down if you've got a sheet of paper. Think about the questions that you have in your life right now, and see if you can identify which ones come from a place of judgment and which ones come from a place of curiosity. And so think about that for a minute, and then if this works, it will be a miracle day. I'd love to see them. If you want to share them, jump to kahoot.it and type in this code right here, this 818-9119, and then just share your question with us. I guess we'll have to first wait for players, but share what your questions are with us. Questions of judgment and questions of curiosity. Has anyone been able to log in? It's just www.kahoot.it. Okay, great. Maybe it's this one. Okay, so first start by sharing your questions of judgment. What questions do you have that are coming from a place of judgment? 818-9119. What? This is my husband's pun all week. What are you talking about again? What's the subject? Okay, we should be able to see your answers. 818-9119. I'm not sure why your answers are not coming up. See if there's a way to get them to come up. Okay, yours is okay. I'm going to see if it'll show up. Okay, let's show your answers here. How can I balance work, church, and volunteer duties? Why are you late? This is great. Why is my son lying about his homework? I love that one, right? That's coming from a place of judgment. You're assuming that he's lying. I love this. Yep. Why won't my children get married? Why did you do that? Why don't you understand what I'm saying? Are you dense? Why are you doing this? Vaccinated? Why would they or I do that? I mean, it's interesting that I'm not saying we need to get rid of judgment. Obviously, this is an important principle in our field. But you usually don't learn something when you ask questions from a place of judgment. And if you're really honest, you probably know why your son is lying on his homework, or you have some sense of it, right? You have some sense of it. And curious questions are the ones that you're going to learn from. So let's jump to that. Go ahead and share your curious questions. Eight 9119. You guys see this? Okay, great. Share your questions that come from a place of curiosity. What does God want next for me? That's beautiful. What can I learn from people with whom I disagree? I actually feel like that's one of the most powerful questions. What can I learn from this person? And it's such a humble stance to be asking that. I feel like it's actually one of the greatest acts of service is to say to someone, to not just say to someone, but to be in a state of believing that you genuinely can learn something important from everyone. Tell me why this is important to you. I love that. How can I help that person see the Savior in their life? What will make me a more effective leader? And that one that may be a question of judgment. What will make me more effective? You may have an answer. You may know that question already. But it's nice to dig deeper. Like, what is it underneath that question that you really don't know? Will you tell me more? Tell me more is, I feel like that's the perfect one-liner to ask. These are great, thank you. What do you think about? Yeah. Did you guys does anyone want to share a thought about this? We were encouraged to make this interactive. I know it's a little bit hard for those who are on Zoom, but anything that's standing out to you guys as you're considering this process of replacing your judgment with curiosity in order to connect deeply with someone and really learn? Please, Catherine.
A lot of times we're asking questions of people that we love or understand, and in our hearts, we feel like we have our questions, but we need to be talking in proper language to use, so that we phrase it the way that they hear it, the way we understand it. I don't think we're very well educated.
There's a great book, I'm forgetting his last name. It's called Words That Work. And his thesis is, it's not what you say, it's what they hear, which I feel like when your focus is on them, that shift happens more naturally. But I mean, what do you think, Catherine? What do you think is, you've thought about this. What answers have you come up with to that kind of difficulty dilemma?
I think that I always start from sort of giving my platform, giving my speech, instead of asking them personally, because I just set the tone by confessing that.
Yeah, that inquiry before advocacy idea. Yeah, Galen.
Well, and part as a good leader, I was taught you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Part of having to set aside some of our in order to speak this. And Carol is the brunt of it more often than anybody. But I myself doing that, it's like I'm asking questions, but based on my observations and my fact gathering and stuff, I think are.
Yeah.
So it's having to set aside part of the whole trip.
Yeah. And that's challenging. I feel like that's very difficult. I mean, have any of you done it? Do you feel like you can do this successfully?
Set it aside.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. It really is.
Yeah.
I know when I do it, it feels good. And it does have very positive results, but it's hard.
Yeah. One of the things that Brenda Hewlin says in her essay is, it's not enough to will it, you actually have to do it. The magic happens when you actually put your judgment aside. Be okay to be in a place of not knowing and ask that, that beautiful, curious question intended to connect with someone. Yeah. There was another hand. Oh, there's another hand. In the back, please.
Sometimes it's not just asking a judgmental comment or a question. Sometimes we don't ask a question And then I found out how sad she was for another brother of mine who had asked some curious questions of her, and it brought me back to the point where I need to reestablish that relationship, let her know that she can talk to me about whatever she wants to talk to me about. And so we started to do that, and our relationship immediately came back to what it was, and we asked curious questions.
Yeah. And along with curiosity, vulnerability too. Sometimes we just don't. I love this about children. They will ask things. My mom had a bad bout of cancer that left her with they take out all her lymph nodes. So her arm is very large. She has one very large arm, and her other is just totally normal. And kids all the time ask her about, what's going on with your arm? What's that sleeve? Why is it a different size? She never has adults ask her that question, right? But sometimes it's really beautiful to ask the vulnerable question. And Naomi Way, one of these scholars who works on a methodology called the Listening Guide that I'm focused on right now currently in my research. She goes around the world and asks people these beautiful vulnerable questions and encourages them to ask it of her too. And one that stands out to me in my mind is people would ask her about her divorce and do you still miss him? And all these beautiful questions that we're oftentimes just too afraid to ask. And I was thinking about that a few weeks ago when I was sitting next to, in a circle of women at a board party. All of them had been divorced, and I just asked, how long does it take to heal from this? I genuinely don't know, and I'm curious about it. And I felt like I connected with those women more quickly and more close, like they're much more closely than anyone else that I have gotten to know them more yet. You've been here for 2 months, but it was, sometimes that one vulnerable question can really make such a difference in terms of your relationships and in the other person also feeling that unfolding and being listened to. Thank you for sharing that. Let's take one more comment. Yeah.
This is a presentation like this, I heard was this the purpose of the way to go about ministry? Don't ask superficial judgment questions, ask questions of curiosity, people can be there, everybody next to you that this reminds me that this is the right way to go about that.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And of course, our Savior is the perfect example, right, of someone who's an amazing transformative listener, always listening, always there. Yeah, I appreciate that. We don't have time for this activity today, but this is your homework. I want you guys to do it. And let me just share this here. So try this at home. I really would encourage you guys to or in your workplace, just with somebody you care about, and sit down in silence with them for a full 10 minutes, okay? Sit in silence with them for 10 minutes, and when you're quiet, it's amazing how that changes the types of questions that you ask. And really think deeply about what is it that I'm really curious about knowing about this person, and then take as much time as you have, 20 minutes each ideally, and ask the person those questions that you are curious about, and then switch sides. It's a really beautiful. My husband and I did this, and like I have all sorts of these assignments when you're using the listening guide methodology, and I discovered things about him that I never knew. And vice versa, even after several years of being married. And as you listen, try to avoid thinking about what you're going to say next or judging what they're saying. Really practice the skill of checking your judgment and just follow your curiosity and follow up with whatever questions you're curious about. It really is a muscle. It really is a muscle. Curiosity, and little simple exercises like this are how you develop it. So let's, All right, we've got a couple more minutes. Let me jump here. See. Okay. Is it sharing? Yeah, okay. So we've talked a little bit about curiosity and about connection. I'll end on the note of charity. And Brett Scharf's, who's at the BYU Law School, has a really nice devotional where he talks about the 3 degrees of charity. And I love this because the reality is sometimes that celestial degree of charity is just feels a little unattainable. And he suggests that we think about listening as sort of an elementary celestial degree of charity. And if we want to start thinking, finding this, this ladder of charity and getting better at it, let's start with how we listen. And then the others, progressing on to how we give and how we love. But it's really that listening, starting there, and then charity can flow from there. I love thinking about listening as a replacement for the word charity in these beautiful passages we have in Moroni and in 1 Corinthians, that listening suffereth long and is kind and envieth not. That this deep, curious, transformative listening is not puffed up, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth. Beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. This is the act of listening. And Brenda Hewland, who we mentioned earlier, finishes her essay with this beautiful quote: "Listening, not talking, is the great and gifted whole. The true listener is much more believed, magnetic than the talker, and he is more effective and learns more and does more good. And so try listening. Listen to your spouse, your children, your friends, to those who love you and those who don't, to those who bore you, to your enemies. It will work a small miracle and perhaps a great one." And I love this, this model that we have of a perfect listener who's always available and wants to hear from us. We often hear that, that quote about how praying, when we pray, we're not trying to change God's will, it's when we pray to change us. And I think a big part of that is because it's transformative listening, and that we are being transformed when we are listened to. And I hope that we can all make it a goal to just have, open a channel in your brain in your own kind of listening of what you pay attention to in life to your listening. Open a channel for that. And I would love to hear, here we go. I would love to hear stories just in your own life. If you do try out the listening in silence exercise, or just paying more attention to your own curiosity in your day-to-day conversations, please shoot me an email. I'd actually love to learn about it and see how this goes for you. So thank you guys very much, and hopefully see you again soon.